Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Elevate Your Running Run Summit second annual. I have a special guest with me today. Claire is a run coach, a podcast host. She's also a super duper athlete and has a really incredible marathon story. Claire, welcome to the summit. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
You're welcome. First questions first. Who is Claire?
Well, I am all sorts of things, I guess. So I found running later in life and fell in love with it after hating it for a really long time and eventually turned it into my passion, but now it's my profession. Thankfully, I don't run for a living, but I help other people run for a living. And it really is, it's my dream job. It's my passion. It is what I'm on this planet to do. I got a lot of good results from my own running, which was very rewarding, but to be perfectly honest, it's nothing in comparison to the joy and pride that I feel from helping other people achieve their dreams. Basically I live, breathe, eat, dream, sleep running. but now it's a lot more for other people instead of just for myself.
Absolutely. That's so inspiring and so great. And as a run coach myself, I can totally relate to you on that. I want to dive right in. You have an incredible marathon story, going from, your first marathon, you ran a 4:02, which is an incredible time. And over the course of 9 marathons, you were able to whittle your time down to an astonishing 2 hours and 58 minutes. I would love to know just how you did that over the course of the 9 marathons and how long that took. Were you racing 2-3 times a year, once a year? What did that look like?
So it took about 4 years. So 2 marathons a year. I would do a spring and a fall every year. And I just kept chipping away at it. So, the backstory is that I had my high school reunion coming up. I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids, and, I wanted to look good. I was not overweight, but I just wanted to, get in shape and, look really good for this high school reunion. So I had run a little bit in my past, but never super seriously. And I was just like, well, I'll just go ahead and start running. And I did, and I hated it for about a year. Like going out to run when it's just for something external like that, it just, for me at least, it really wasn't that fun. And I wasn't actually that fit, even though I had always done something active. But running, was hard for me. It just, like it's hard for everybody else. And I didn't enjoy it that much. It was kind of a means to an end. And by the time my reunion came along, I actually had started kind of liking running, surprise, surprise, and I kept going. And so a friend of mine from high school, she had just done the Boston Marathon. And I was like, well, if she can do it, then I can do it. And so I'm like, I'm just going to sign up for the Boston Marathon. When then I realized you can't just do that. You actually have to run another marathon, excuse me, first. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just go ahead and qualify for the Boston Marathon on my first try. And, that didn't quite work, but I just kind of fell down a rabbit hole. I started teaching myself all about running, reading about running, learning about running, buying books about running. Just became really obsessed with it and trained myself for my first marathon. And I chose a marathon here where I live in Asheville, North Carolina. And it was very, very cold, wet, rainy. It's probably 45 degrees and raining. And it's a hilly, tough course. So it definitely taught me a few lessons. And I did not make my qualifying time then. I did get a 4:02, which was respectable. I was happy with that in some sense. But I was like, well, I need to try again. And so I found my next marathon. It was in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, flew out there and ran my qualifying time on my second race. And so that was probably 3 or 4 months later. And I just barely made it. I think I made it by 90 seconds or something like that. And that year it was good enough. And I was able to go to Boston. And so that qualifying time, so I got like, I think it was a 3:38 for my age was what I needed. And I didn't really have the thought that I would be able to break 3 hours for a long time, but I, had kind of found my thing. I really, really liked marathoning and marathon training. I found, Asheville has a huge running scene, both the trail and roads. And so I found my tribe. I started going to the track every Tuesday and doing tempo runs at the pub, ending at a pub every Thursday, and just really found like-minded people who were super inspiring, people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s who were all running killer times and much faster than me. And I was just so inspired by all these amazing people, many of them professionals with families and kids and jobs, and they found time to be just complete, badasses at running. And I was just like, this is really cool. And so each marathon, I slowly chipped away. And all but one, I did have one disastrous one where I had to DNF. But besides that one, all of my marathons progressively got faster and faster and faster. And we could talk a little bit of the details about how that happened. But it got to the point where, I was going from, 4:02, 3:38, and then down to 3:26, 3:11. And I kept getting closer and closer, where it became like, well, wait a second, I am not that far away from 3 hours. And I'm in my 40s at this point. And it just became, an obsession, for lack of a better word. Like, I was absolutely obsessed. I knew that I could do it. My training was showing me that I could do it in workouts. And so I just had to go out there and do it. And my second to last one came in at 3 hours and 29 seconds, which, is still a 3-hour marathon. People kept telling me that, but no, you got to get that too. I really, really wanted to get under 3 hours. And so I got the last one in Phoenix, and that was 2:58.
Amazing. Is that the Mesa Marathon or the Phoenix Marathon? It's the Mesa Marathon.
Phoenix. Mm-hmm.
Great. I hope that's good vibes. I'm running that race in about a month, 5 weeks.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's a great one. It's really, really nice. Nice, gentle downhill for the most part, but there's quite a bit of flat. And then there is one section that is an uphill that, you've got to prepare for, but it really, really nice, gentle course. Really, really beautiful.
Great. That's awesome to hear. I love that. How much time did you take between marathons? Like you mentioned that you race twice a year, in the spring and the fall. Would you take recovery time after the spring marathon, let's say, and dive back into training, a few months later? Because they were roughly maybe about 6 months apart.
Right.
How did you structure that to make sure that you stayed healthy and you weren't getting injured?
Yeah, I never got a single injury, which is pretty remarkable. But I did, do all the right things. So I had a coach at the time who really believed in taking 7 full days off running after a marathon. And I encourage my athletes to do the same today. So 7 days, 0 running, no matter how you're feeling, even if you're feeling great. And it is partly mental and partly physical. So I would always do that and, eat a lot that week and really just be like, you've done an amazing thing. Be respectful of your training, be respectful of your body, and take a break. And then I would not start into marathon training right away. So I would do spring and fall marathons. There was a couple times, excuse me, where I did a fall and then a winter marathon, but never more than 4 months apart. But for the most part, it was spring and fall. And then I wouldn't start right away back into marathon training. I don't believe that it's healthy to constantly be training for the marathon. So I would do 5Ks, a couple 10Ks, not too many 10Ks, but I would train for 5Ks. And I will tell you, I think I think 5Ks are harder than the marathon if done right. I don't enjoy 5Ks. I think they are very, very stressful, but I did end up getting halfway decent at the 5K too, but more so to support my marathon training versus, trying to get a really fast time at the 5K. But yeah, it would definitely vary my training and take a break and, do all the things that you need to do to really prepare. I never over raced. There were some times where I had some races close together, but that was kind of a rare thing but never marathons back to back. Never, I would never do that. I think if you are trying to be your very, very best, really at anything, you need to take time to do the thing, recover, build up to do the thing again, and then repeat. Like if you're constantly in that same phase all the time, you're going to plateau. So I really did take periods of time to vary my training.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I coach a lot of athletes. I'm sure you do too, who love racing and they have
Right.
so many races on their calendar. But let's say the goal is to, run a spring marathon to BQ. I feel like all those other races in the training cycle could be a distraction to the actual like goal itself.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, for
definitely
sure.
agree. Go ahead.
Oh, for sure they are. So, when you look at that, I mean, over racing is definitely something that will impact your training, especially if you're running them hard. But even if you're not, people are like, oh, I'm just going to run a marathon for fun with my friends and it's going to be fine. And it's not really going to affect me that much. And you know what? If that's your jam, go for it. Have a great time, be with your friends, do something social. That's amazing. But don't expect 2 weeks later that you're going to run the time of your life. That's not, you can't have it all. I'm sorry to break it to you. But, if you really have a certain goal, like you want to do X in the marathon or you want to do X in the 5K, whatever it is, you really need to put your whole heart and soul in it, and that will get you closer to your absolute potential. It's not even just a distraction mentally, it's just not the consecutive training that you need to be your best marathoner. So, but again, if your goal is to be a runner for life, if running is your social thing, if you love the joy of racing, race every weekend. If you want to, go for it, but don't try to also say, well, I also want to be the best at marathoning. If you want to be the best you possibly can be at the marathon, you can't race the marathon every weekend.
It's so true. It's so true. I want to highlight, you mentioned that training for a 5K can be pretty tricky or difficult. It might not be your favorite. I just have to say, like, I'm also on the same page with you. I trained for a 5K. Well, let me back up. I ran a fall marathon in October, trained for a 5K in November and a little bit in December. And it was much, much harder and more difficult than training for the marathon that I was training for over the summer. So it's interesting how a short distance like that can actually be harder than training for something that is, quite a bit longer.
Yeah.
Workouts
Yeah.
are
Well,
different.
you need to do a lot more higher end work to do well at the 5K. And I've always joked that my 5K pace and my marathon pace are right about the same, which is not quite true, but it feels like that. So, it's like, would you rather be thrown into the frying pan or would you rather sit in a hot tub for 4 hours? It's kind of the same thing. I think I would rather sit and stew than put my feet to the fire. So and some people are way better at the 5K and they pull off some amazing 5K time, but that doesn't translate to the marathon. And there's physiological reasons for that. Everybody has talents in different ways. And as we age, we kind of lean a little bit more towards endurance for most people, not everybody. So, so there's things that change as we get older, but a lot has to do with your training and your preferences.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. I feel the same way. I'm like, my 5K pace feels very similar to marathon pace. Um, And that's okay. I'd rather sit in the hot tub for
Yeah.
3, 4 hours.
Right.
So you mentioned that you learned and taught yourself a lot about running when you ran your first marathon. And then 4 months later or so, you BQ'd, which is incredible. That's an awesome accomplishment, especially on your second one.
Mhm.
And you were probably in really great shape for that first one, but with the hills and maybe the weather, there's a lot of things
Right.
can come up in the marathon. It's a long distance. How did your training differ from that first marathon where you were training yourself? You
Mhm.
got the 402. You mentioned having a coach. At what point did the coach come into this process? And did your training cycle look any different when you ran the 258?
Yes, definitely looked a lot different. So, my first few marathons, it might have been 3 or 4, I did on my own, but I used a Runners Connect training plan. And eventually I hired Runners Connect to train me. And then they eventually hired me to train other people. So that's how I got started with coaching, was through Runners Connect. So I was following their advice this whole time. Um, sorry, I have a little bit of a cold. It's not COVID, it's just a cold. um, anyway, and so I was following Runners Connect training philosophy for a really long time. I was looking, reading everything that they had online. I mean, they have so much information online. And so I was following that on my own. But eventually, as I started progressing, I was like, look, I really need somebody else looking at this, making sure that I'm doing everything right. And so I started working with them. I believe that was after Chicago. So that was like my third or fourth. Um, and then that really actually helped because I was able to see my blind spots. I was able to, they would kind of pull me back from running too much, which I definitely did a little bit of that, a lot of that probably. But I was able to handle high mileage. It just worked for me for a while until it didn't. and it really wasn't actually the high mileage. It was the high mileage combined with all the workouts. So I would do like a track day on Tuesday, a tempo run on Thursday, and then like a long run on the weekends. And I would take a day off probably every 10 days or so. But I started getting my mileage up pretty high pretty quickly. But again, I could handle it. I never got any injuries. But by the end, I was up to probably 90 miles a week, which is quite a lot. But even in my lower mileage time, quote unquote lower, I was still doing about 60 or 70 miles a week very regularly. But then towards the end, when I was getting closer and closer, so I got 311, 311, 306, and then 3 on the nose almost. And what I was doing just wasn't working. And I think what actually turned it around for me is that I did pull back. So I dropped that second workout a week. I dropped my mileage because I was kind of mentally and physically getting burned out because I was so close to reaching this goal that I had been going for so long. And I just was kind of beating my head against the wall. And I'm just like, I have to get this. I really, really, really wanted this. And I was like, look, sometimes when you really, really want something, you have to let go a little bit. So I like to tell my athletes now that big goals, big scary goals are great, but they're kind of like a bar of wet soap. The tighter you hold on to them, the more they slip away. And that was definitely happening to me. And so when I was like, look, you are fit, you are capable, you need to chill out. You don't need to run every last mile. You don't need to run 90 miles a week. You can do this. You are beating yourself up more than you are building yourself up. Pull back and see what happens. And that is what changed it for me.
That is so interesting because I think a lot of times as athletes, as runners, we want to run all the miles. We want to do all the workouts. We want to work really, really, really hard. And sometimes that works. It worked for you for a long time. And then there comes this time or this period in your training where it's almost working smarter and not harder,
Mhm.
pulling back, giving yourself that grace and that time to just focus on what you needed to focus on to get that sub 3 hours. So that's incredible.
Mhm.
And it's just a really great reminder that we don't need to do all the things and be overcommitted into something, and we can really just dial it back to what works for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because even at your lower points of mileage, 50, 60 miles a week, that's pretty high for some athletes too. So just finding that balance for you. And I think it's also a great reminder to not compare yourself to other people and to other runners and other athletes. Did you find yourself comparing you to other maybe elite quote unquote athletes who are striving for that sub 3?
Um, not elites like professional level, but again, my town has a lot of really fast masters runners and
Mm,
almost masters runners. So there was definitely a sense for sure that I wanted to be one of the fast women. I so like you go to a group track run and everybody is welcome. It's wonderful. Any speed, any pace, any ability, you can go to these track workouts. But you would kind of separate yourself naturally, the faster runners, the medium runners, and so on. Everybody would find like their pack of runners. And as fast as I was never in the with the fastest women. I never was. And so like literally these women are ahead of me. I am watching them ahead of me. I could never ever catch them. And so yeah, I would be lying to say that I wasn't saying to myself, I want to be one of the fast women. I did. I did want to be one of the fast women. So
mm,
I think I thought a lot about this, about comparison. And, we really want to say, oh, don't compare yourself with others. You do you and all of this stuff. But I don't think that's human nature. I think we always compare and we always will compare, and trying not to compare is just unrealistic. But I think what we can control is our reaction to the comparison. So, like when you see another person who is doing better than you at whatever it is, running, for example, you can say, okay, I am happy for that person. They are doing great. They are doing the same thing that I love and they're having success. So you can feel happy for them, or you can feel inspired by them. Be like,
mm.
oh, Jenna's a great runner. I would love to be a runner like that. But it's when you have the negative emotions with comparison, that's where we get ourselves into trouble. So if we're like, oh, I'm not good enough because I'm not as good as Jenna. Well, Jenna's running has nothing to do with your running, right? So it's a lot better to say, oh, she's inspiring. I would like to be more like her. Like I think that we can use comparison to our advantage, and we can use it in a positive way. But the whole messaging, don't compare yourself, I think that's just unrealistic. I think we can compare ourselves. Competition is part of what makes competition fun. I mean, these people are great runners. If everybody was slower than you, and you're, how could you even try to improve, like, so I think faster runners in your life are a great thing. I think slower runners in your life is a great thing. I think
Mm.
everybody has a place in this sport. So don't beat yourself up for comparing, but do kind of like watch your reactions to it, I think.
That is a beautiful message. I love that. It's so true. Like, we can't stop the comparison trap. Like, we're there. We're humans. You said it. Like, that's perfect. It's how we shift our mindset around it and try and create a positive outcome using those faster men or women as inspiration to, maybe be a little bit more committed to the process or committed to the training, or know that over time, if you're consistent, you're most likely becoming a faster, stronger runner. Um, I had a conversation with my friend Jonathan Levitt. He is a podcast host for The Long Run, and is a great friend. He lives in Boulder. I live in Boulder, and we were sharing like how we can be on the track running hard workouts, like hard 200, 400s, and yet we still have those really fast runners just blowing right past us.
Yeah.
And you can have one of two outcomes or reactions, right? Like, you can get really down on yourself and think gosh, I'm not a fast runner. This is now making it really hard. I feel really bad about myself. Or shift into a different mindset and use it as fuel and let them be the rabbit and just chase them.
Yes.
And no matter what, you'll get faster because of it, stronger.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. You know, because unless you are the fastest runner in the world, there will always be faster runners. And so, you know, you could say, oh, who cares? Live your own life. But like, you know, we can't help some of our emotions. We they just come. It's like the weather, right? But we can kind of shift how we talk to ourselves. And
absolutely.
that's one thing that I work with my runners a lot with is, you know, self-talk. How do we change that negative self-talk? And there's lots of mental strength techniques that we can practice that can help shift what we're doing. And some of them are silly, and some of them might sound ridiculous, but our minds, you know, they work in pretty miraculous ways. And the way you talk to yourself really, really matters.
It absolutely does. Like, talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend,
Yes.
and give yourself grace and love and support, and it'll go a long way. All right. So I'm curious, a few more questions on the marathon side. What is your favorite marathon workout or just track tempo long run workout in general?
If that one's easy for me, my favorite marathon workout is the 2x6. So that is after you do a warm up mile or two, you do 6 miles at roughly marathon pace. For some people, maybe a touch faster. Then you stand around for 10 minutes to get all that junk building up. You don't run, you don't jog, you know, get on the phone, sit down, you know, hang out for 10 minutes. And then you do it again, do 6 more miles at marathon pace or just a little faster, and then do a cool down. So if you can handle that, that really tells you a lot about your marathon fitness. So this is a workout that you want to do about 6 weeks before your race. Excuse me, 6 weeks before your race, maybe 8 weeks for some people. And that will, if you can handle that and you're feeling relatively decent, you don't have to feel great. But if you can do that 6 to 8 weeks out from your race, you know you're in good shape.
Yeah, it's a confidence booster for sure. And also a really fun workout.
Mhm.
I would say mine is like a 2x5, and it's
All
not,
right.
very similar, but not taking the time off in between the 5 mile at
Mhm.
goal pace. So I'm going to try that next time, or talk to my coach
Yeah.
and see if we can try that next time.
That the 10-minute break is really important because you know how you feel after a run, after you've, you know, gotten home and you've had a drink or whatever, your muscles just kind of feel all junky and heavy. That's what you feel standing around in between those two sections. And it's like making the second half harder, which if you can get through that difficulty, it really is a sign that your legs are ready and your mind is ready. So don't forget that 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it simulates a really great last 10K or so in the marathon when we are feeling heavy, we're feeling tired and fatigued, and we need to push through. And it's a great training run to reference in the taper time when you're going back through your training to celebrate the wins and
Yeah.
boost the confidence going into race day. Last question on marathon training. Like, what advice do you have to our audience who might be seeking that BQ, might be seeking that sub 3, or just a faster marathon time?
Small, constant actions. That's how you do anything. You know, we tend to really want everything right now. And I'm no
Mhm.
exception. I thought that I was going to get that sub 3 in 2 years, and it took me 4 years. So the thing is, have patience, trust your training. If you do most things right, you're going to be okay. Does not mean you have to be 100%. In fact, don't try to be 100%. Perfection does not exist. When you go into a hard workout, I want my athletes to turn in a B plus. I don't want A pluses. I don't want anybody swinging for the fences. You can swing for the fences on race day, of course. You can do it in training maybe once or twice a year. but I really want you to turn in an above average workout. I want challenging but doable, but never redlining. Because when we push ourselves to the red line of, almost all out, we can only do that so often before we either break or we burn out. And it's far better just to do pretty good, get used to good enough, because good enough usually is good enough. And you really don't have to kill yourself. You need to be consistent. You need to do the job. You need to get stuff done, but you also have to have grace with yourself. And you also just have to take it day by day.
Great advice. Trust the training, give yourself grace. I love it. That's great. I want to transition into who you are as an athlete and what you consume on a day-to-day basis and what you fuel your body with. So you are a vegan, and I am really intrigued by this. Were you, because I know of other vegans, my coach is a vegan, and you all seem to say the same thing, which is your running has really improved since you went full vegan. Have you seen that change in your training, or were you a vegan throughout your entire marathon training?
Yeah, so I became plant-based before I started marathoning. So, but not that much before. So probably about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months before. So, but this has been almost a decade now. So I cannot say that there was any change in my running because of it. But, and to clarify the difference between vegan and plant-based. So vegan is more about what you don't eat. So a vegan does it for the animal, someone who doesn't eat any animal products, and it doesn't really matter about the health of the food. It just matters that it's not an animal product. Whereas plant-based is eating as many plants as possible for health reasons. And, some people call plant-based when you're mostly eating plants, and they might throw in some eggs or dairy or fish every once in a while, but I'm 100% plant-based, so none of that stuff, and is all really for health and longevity. So mostly whole foods, but not always. I'm not perfect either, and I like French fries too. But no, I mean, I really think that eating more plants, no matter what kind of diet you're on, is always a good thing. I think whole foods especially are important because they make you feel fuller. You get a lot more nutrients. Fiber is really less talked about, and that's super important for gut health for all sorts of reasons. We all know that plants are good for us. And if you're filling your plate with mostly plants most of the time, you're going to be, doing a great thing. But, I am not someone who's super dogmatic about it. I work with people who are not plant-based. And, the thing that I joke about is pretty much everybody is vegan while they're running. Nobody's eating cheeseburgers while they're running down the road, right? Most people are eating non-animal products while they're running. And, I just think that it is, there's lots of science to back it up. But for me personally, it's the best way that I feel that I can fuel my body, keep lots of energy, and maintain my weight without even really trying. I think that, a lot of people have had issues in the past. A lot of runners, myself included, used running as a weight loss tool, which it can be, but that can also tip you towards the other side if you're going too far into the, losing weight for performance side. That can get you into trouble. So you always, no matter what diet you're on, you need to make sure you're eating enough calories to support your performance. But so plant-based in general, I think is something that really, really works for me. But, I want to be perfectly honest with the science. It's the best diet, number one, is one that you can stick to, but it is not about perfection. So if you are 100% plant-based, like I am I healthier than somebody who occasionally eats fish? No, definitely not. You can eat whatever you want. You're a grown up, eat whatever you want, but you don't have to be perfect, or whatever perfect means to have a healthy diet. For me personally, I like black and white. Like, it wouldn't work for me if I was like, oh, I'm plant-based, but I eat cheese sometimes. That just wouldn't work for me, because I'd end up eating cheese all the time, and then I'd have a cheese problem, right? So for me, it works better just to be like, okay, this is where I am. For other people, they can incorporate a few things that are not plants every once in a while, and they don't seem to have any problems with that. So, for me, I think that encouraging people to eat whole foods as much as possible is great. For runners, whole foods can be a problem when you're running. I don't recommend that you eat whole foods when you're running, except if you're an ultra runner and you need to have whole foods at times. That's an exception. But for marathon distance and below, trying to eat whole foods while you're running there are very few people that can do that successfully, because fiber is tough on your digestive system when you're running. And, I get a lot of people who are like, well, I want to eat whole foods all the time, especially when I'm running, and I don't want to eat too much sugar. And it's like, well, your body processes food differently when you're exercising than when you're sedentary. So eating sugar, whatever you call sugar, fructose, glucose, all that stuff, if you're eating a gel while you're running, that gel is going to be metabolized and used for fuel immediately by your muscles. It's not going to do all the nasty stuff that it does when you're sitting on the couch. So you really do need to look at why you're eating what. So if your goal is to eat something for performance, eating a potato while you're running down the road is probably not the best for your performance. But eating a gel or one of the starch solutions or something, something else that's made for running, will help your performance more than whole foods. So I think that it's really important to distinguish what you're eating during the run and what you're eating after the run and what you're eating before the run, because we want to eat healthy as possible. But when you are focused on performance, what you're eating has to be performance based. And as much as I hate to say it, whole foods are not going to cut it while you are running really hard.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And thank you for the correction on vegan versus plant-based. What is your favorite go-to, like, post long run meal?
If it's a meal, it's just going to be regular food, so I would always try to time my runs so that I end up with a meal. So I'm not just snacking for the sake of snacking, but I think you should always eat after a run. So it really could be anything. I love stir fries. So I'd have a stir fry with rice and lots of veggies and tofu or beans. I like Mexican food, so a big burrito. I don't eat salads in the winter because I'm a cold person and I can't handle cold food in the winter. I need hot food. So I would, make a curry or do something with chickpeas, or there's loads and loads of possibilities. But eating a real satisfying meal of real food, hopefully hot in the winter, is what I would go for. If I'm not at mealtime, or it's not time to eat a full meal after a run, I try to get in excuse me, something with carbs and protein. So my favorite go-to is simply fruit and nuts. So whether it's a banana and a handful of mixed nuts, or peanut butter or something like that. Good old peanut butter and jelly is always great. So, you don't have to stress about eating something absolutely right after your run. You can go take a shower, you can take a little bit of a break, but you do want to fuel up when you can. If you're not super hungry afterward, it is okay to take a break and wait until you're hungry after your run. I think the only time that you do want to eat when you're not hungry after a run is when you have to do another workout later. So it's really challenging to the body. Fasted running, fasted lifting is really, really tough on the body. And so if you run and then you're going to be working out either lifting or a second run in the day, that's when that whole nutrient timing window is really important. So you do want to eat even if you're not hungry. And if you really can't stomach whole food after a run, lots of people are like that. Try to have something to drink with calories. Just put something in your body. I could go on and on about fasted running. Bad idea, especially for women. But definitely try to fill yourself up with fuel so that you can recover and start that process and feel better sooner.
I absolutely agree. It's super important if you're refueling in that 30, 60-minute window, maybe you're drinking, some coconut water in a smoothie or a recovery shake, just getting something in your body so you can live your life for the rest of the day. You can get that second workout in. We may need to have another session at some point and talk all about fasted running because I am really intrigued by just the nutrition side and how much we can shift our athleticism around what we're eating, the timing around it, what we're fueling our body with. So maybe a topic for another day. What is your best advice for someone who's looking to go plant-based? The number one thing that you would suggest?
Well, I would say get a good cookbook, first of all, and don't try to make it too ridiculously healthy. I think that was the mistake that I made right away is like, oh, I'm doing this for my health. I have to make everything so super, super healthy. And I ended up making things that tasted terrible and no one would eat them, even me. I would make these meals for my family and they're like, ew, mom, gross. So if you can learn to cook a few things that are kind of staple, yummy comfort foods, that will go a long way. So I learned to make scalloped potatoes with a cashew cream base. And I swear no one would know that they're not vegan. They're absolutely delicious. And, when you're making things that are enjoyable and taste good, that is when you're going to be like, hey, this is really not that big of a deal. So have a few go-to things, and I would also say, have a sense that you're adding to your life instead of taking away. A lot of people say, well, you can't eat that and you can't eat that. And I was like, well, I can eat anything I want. I'm choosing to eat this way for a reason. And, I think it's enhancing my life. I don't think that it's taking anything away. And so when you look at it that way, instead of it being really restrictive, it actually opens up a whole new more doors of things that you can eat. There's all sorts of amazing, delicious food out there that just happens to be plant-based. And now it's even easier to become plant-based. There's all sorts of people out there. It's like a trend. And I would say, you can at first rely on some of the more processed products out there. They're not necessarily the healthiest. And some of the things, the Impossible Burgers and Beyond Burgers, they're not even that much better nutritionally than their meat-based products. But I would say they can help you in a pinch and they can help you transition to more plant-based eating all the time. But I would say that just because something is vegan doesn't mean it's automatically healthy. Coca-Cola and Oreos are vegan, right? So it's not automatically healthy. But you know what? Your diet doesn't always have to be perfectly healthy. Give yourself some grace, give yourself some treats. As long as they're treats and not habits, you're doing fine. But it's kind of like anything new. Have fun with it, be curious, and give yourself some grace and see how you feel. If you try it and, you're not feeling good, first of all, make sure you're eating enough calories. That's where some people go wrong when they switch to a plant-based diet is they eat nothing but like lettuce and rice. And they're just like, why do I feel like crap? And it's like, well, because you're eating lettuce and rice, you need to educate yourself a little bit on how to make a balanced plate that includes protein, that includes good fat. You'll need to learn a little bit about the basics of how to make a nutritious meal, but little secret, you should be doing that anyway. No matter what,
Yeah.
no matter what you include in your diet, you should actually learn what a nutritious meal is. And once you have the basics of it, and it's pretty simple, then the world is yours, and it's easier than ever to create delicious food. So that's a long way of saying make it simple and make it delicious.
I love that. I love it. And it's flipping the script on what the story that you're telling yourself, right? Like, have that abundance mindset and think of it as adding to your life rather than restricting. And I know I've shifted in that way over the last few years. I'm gluten intolerant, soy intolerant, eat very little dairy. So trending more on that plant-based side of things. And I look at it as an opportunity to try new foods, to have, to just feel better and to be able to add to what I'm currently eating. So I love that mindset. And do you have a favorite cookbook that you would recommend to someone who's starting out?
Yes, I always recommend Chloe's Kitchen by Chloe Coscarelli. She has a bunch of cookbooks and they're all really good, but that was her first one. And it is not about health food. She does use vegan butter. She does use oil. It's not about being perfectly healthy, but it is about being accessible, easy, and delicious. And that is how you should start your journey rather than, like I'm going to eat buckwheat groats every day. And, there's nothing wrong with those, but like that is like a level 2 vegan, right? That is not what you want to start off with, because you're going to be like, this is nasty. So Chloe's Kitchen is a great place to start. She has all the basics. And once you master the basics, you can expand from there. But again, make it fun. Don't make it Claire said I have to eat this way and I'm going to eat. You're never going to stick to it. With any diet change, it's about something that is something you could realistically do for life. It is not about a diet. It is not about a temporary thing. It is about, you're doing this for your health. You're doing this for your for the environment. You're doing it for the animals, whatever reason you're doing it for. Really lean into why you're doing it, see how you feel after you learn about what you need to do. You do need to make sure you're getting enough B12. That is the one thing that you can't get on a completely vegan diet. But again, a lot of omnivores have a problem getting enough B12. So it's not totally, a vegan problem. But again, learn the few things to make good nutritional choices. And once you have that down, with a good cookbook and making it delicious, it's really not it's not any harder than any other way of eating.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And you mentioned a few times having fun, and it's the number one, and I hate saying this word because I feel like it's very rigid, rule with my athletes. Like, we get to have fun in training, we get to have fun making our meals, we get to have fun in life. We get one shot at this. Like, if we're not having fun, what are we doing? So I love that you can also kind of incorporate that into your food and how you're fueling your body. So you mentioned you're a run coach. You also have a podcast, Run to the Top. I'd love for you to just share anything that you want on either, give us maybe a quick rundown on the podcast and how you started it, and also how it translates into your run coaching, if it does.
Yeah. So Run to the Top is the podcast that was started by Runners Connect. So like I mentioned earlier, I have been a coach with Runners Connect for years, and they invited me to be the host of the podcast about 2 years ago. So it is not 100% my podcast. It's Runners Connect podcast, but it's been going on for about 9 years now. And I've kind of taken my own spin on it. I have, I produce it as well. So it is 100% my baby. And so on Wednesdays, we do an interview. And on Fridays, we do a solo episode. So the Friday episodes will be a topic, anything to do about running that we really want to go in more depth about. So a lot of running 101 stuff, but also more in-depth stuff for, advanced runners, older runners, intermediate runners, basically anything. And those are shorter episodes. Those are, 15 to 20 minutes long that are really in depth about one minute detail of running. And the interviews are, sometimes they're with famous people, sometimes they're Olympians, coaches, A-list kind of runners, but then we also do regular people too. So the goal with the interviews is not just to be a celebrity show that says, oh, you're a fast runner, tell us why you're so fast kind of thing. There's plenty of podcasts out there that do that. What I like to do is cut to the chase and really think about my audience. What can they get from this show that will help them be a better runner by the end of the episode? So I try to really focus on one topic with my guests as well. So a recent podcast guest I had was the race director of Grandma's Marathon, which is in Duluth, Minnesota. And we did talk a little bit about grandmas, but what I really wanted Greg on the show for is to talk about winter running. He's in northern Minnesota, so let's tell people how to dress for winter runs, how to use the spikes that they put on their shoes, or when you should stay inside and use the treadmill, things like that. So it's not about you're this famous race director, let's talk all about you. It's like, well, what can our listeners learn from the show? So that's really what I think about every single time I record. I really want it to be something that the average runner can listen to that'll be like, hey, this is a great idea. I'm going to use this today in my running. But I also coach. I no longer coach for Runners Connect anymore. I do all my coaching through theplantedrunner.com. And so I do all one-on-one coaching with my athletes there. And, the way that I coach, obviously I'm heavily influenced by Runners Connect. And, Jeff Gaudette is the CEO of Runners Connect, or the founder, and he is an old Hanson's guy. So if you're familiar with the Hanson's marathon method, so it kind of has gone through a few iterations before it came to me. But the way that I like to coach is I have what I call my 3 pillars. So of course it's their training. So that's the running, the strength training, the stretching, and the foam rolling, all that stuff. Then it's the nutrition. So not just plant-based nutrition, but everything you need to fuel your runs before, during, and after. And then the third pillar is the mental strength training. So I believe that the mental work that you need to do to be a great runner, or the best runner that you can be, is just as important as the nutrition and the running. So I include mental strength workouts every week for my runners, something that they can either practice outside of the run, or something that they will use during the run to help with their negative self-talk, or whatever it is, to get them through those hard patches and change the way they are thinking into a more positive note. And for any of the people that are watching this or listening to this right now, I do have a little freebie for you guys. So it is a what to eat before, during, and after run. It's the ultimate guide, and you can grab it. It's just a free download. There's no strings attached. And it's at theplantedrunner.com/join, JOIN. So you can snag that, and it's just a pretty little PDF that will help answer your questions about what to eat when, super basic. And that's, again, plantedrunner.com/join.
I love that. I feel like it's so important as coaches to not just focus in on the training, the nutrition, the strength training and the core, but also transitioning to nutrition and setting our athletes up for success with what they're eating before, during, and after a hard workout, an easy day. Maybe
Exactly.
it's the week after the marathon where they're eating a lot because their body's recovering. And then that mental strength side, so important. Something I do with my athletes is I incorporate 5 to 10 minutes of meditation a few times a week. I feel like that can also help get the athlete aligned with race day and getting into that meditative flow state. So,
For sure.
thank you so much, Claire. It was so fun to interview you and chat with you and hear your story. Where can our audience find you online on social, and then also for your podcast?
Well, the only social media channel that I use with any regularity is Instagram. So I'm on Instagram a lot, and I'm at The Planted Runner. And my website is theplantedrunner.com. And if you would like to check out the podcast, it's called The Run to the Top, and you can get that anywhere you get your podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll include this all in the show notes. So anyone who's live or listening on playback will have all that information forever. Thank you so much, Claire. It was a pleasure talking to you and getting to know you today.
Well, thank you for having me, Sarah. This was great.
You're welcome. Bye.